So now that your star field is done and approved, it's time to move on to the nebula. The nebula is this gaseous body that will serve as our middle ground. This is these vast clouds of dust and particles that over time and gravity coalesce into new stars and planetary systems and things like that. So it adds a nice little gap between our star field background and our planet and moon foreground. So let me go ahead and delete these, and we'll start from scratch and go through the lesson plan step by step. Now you can't see it, but on another monitor I have the lesson plan open, and I'm just going to do exactly what it says. So I'm going to start with a new layer. The layer I'd like to start with is blue, because blue is my favorite color, and I'm going to do a blue nebula. And then I need to make sure that my foreground color and my background color are color I've chosen and black. Now it doesn't matter what color you choose to start with, whether it's red or magenta or violet or blue. So we need to start by filling the layer pure black. So I'm going to click on the paint bucket, invert my color so black is on top, and just like we did with our star layers, start by filling it black. Then switch my colors back so blue is on top, your chosen color is on top, black is underneath. So I'm going to go to Filter, Render, and then Difference Clouds. Now this does not give me the look I want, so I want to repeat that filter twice. So I'm going to go to Filter and repeat Difference Clouds, which actually makes it worse, but if I repeat it a second time, I get this nice kind of web-like pattern, and this is what I'm looking for. All right? So we basically run the filter 3 times. We're going to go and run Filter, Render, Difference Clouds, and then we're going to repeat it twice, and we should get an effect like this. Now, the next step on page 9 of the lesson plan is we need to decide where we want our nebula to go. Looking at your result, you're going to kind of pick a path that kind of follows a very solid path that we can follow. So maybe I start in the bottom left-hand corner, and I'll move up through here and off in the right-hand corner, or perhaps I start here and maybe go across my canvas. I can start at the bottom middle and have it snake up through like this. It doesn't really matter, but what we want to do is pick a path where we start on one side and go all the way across to another side, following where the filter result is more solid. So I like this diagonal. You do not have to do the same direction I'm doing. You're going to judge yours based off of your result. So I have a path that I like starting in the bottom left-hand corner and then just coming up through here and dipping out over here. So what I need to do is get rid of all the rest of the stuff that I don't want. The lesson plan says select the burn tool. Now the burn tool is probably hiding underneath the dodge tool, which looks like a lollipop. So I'm going to click on it, hold down, and select burn tool. Now it says to select a brush that's 300 to 400 pixels wide. So I'm going to hit left bracket to get something like that. But make sure it's set to 0% hardness. We want it on 0% hardness so we have soft edges. And we want to set the exposure to 100%. Now chances are the default for you is midtones. If it's not working quickly, we might need to switch it to shadows, but we're going to give this a shot. So now what I'm going to do is just zoom out a little bit, and actually I want a little bit of a bigger brush. Not sure why that's giving me trouble. There we go. All right. And now I'm going to start to burn away where I don't want this. So I'm going to come up through here and then just start clicking and burning. Now this is taking a while, so now I'm going to switch over from midtones to shadows to see if that goes quicker, and it does. So the important thing is that along the edges, I don't want crisp edges. I want the clouds to kind of fade out on its edge. And I don't want a stripe. I want the edge of my nebula to kind of ebb and flow. So I'm going to take some bites out of it in some places. But right now I have this almost perfectly straight diagonal, which I don't like. So I'm going to come back to my burn brush and maybe take a little bit more chunk out of there. Now I'm going to start working on my other side. Let me switch back to midtones. Get it started. And now I'll switch back to shadows now that it's darker and start to get rid of the rest. And we want to get rid of everything that we're not using. So it'll take a few minutes to get there. but that's not bad. What I'm looking for is I want, even though it's going from the bottom left corner to the upper right hand corner, I don't want it to be a straight stripe. This goes up and then down and up and down and then out. The bottom is a little bit worse. It's more of a straight line, so I'm going to take some bites out of that and go back and edit. Maybe take a chunk out of that, chunk there, leave it thicker down on the bottom. So there, now we have a more organic and natural kind of shape. Both sides of it ebb and flow like a river. Okay? Up, in, and then out, and then in, out, in, and out. Nice shape to that layer. Okay? Do not create a straight stripe. Now, here comes the tricky part. We're going to double click on our layer, and this brings up our layer options. Okay? We're going to want to set the layer blend mode to screen so we can see through to our stars. But we're also going to need to play around with the blend if this layer. Now there's a little pyramid here, and as I move that pyramid to the right, it will start to delete my blue and replace it with black. But if I split this pyramid, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's a little hash mark in between, which means I can break it in half. And I do that by holding down Alt on my keyboard and just clicking on the right half, and it splits it. So now I can leave the left half here behind and just move the right end, and I have a little bit more control. So I'm going to move my window a little more out of the way. If you get too close to where you started, it'll rejoin back into one. Just remember, you just hold down Alt and click on the right half, and it'll split it. If you take it too far, it's going to delete everything. But we do want to take a little bit of an edge off. And this number here, mine is 23, but your number is going to change based off of your selection, your color, and how much you want to keep or delete. All right? But the look we're going for here is more of this distant cloud type look where we have some holes and gaps and some more dense areas. And again, one of the most important things is the actual shape of the cloud. We're trying to avoid it looking like a stripe. So this feels pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and now I have a nebula. If I zoom in, because I set the blending mode to screen, I can see my stars through it. So far, so good. But I want more than one color. I'd like a second color to kind of interact with this blue. So what I'm going to do now is pick another color. And this time I'm going to choose violet. So like a red violet. So violet nebula is what I'm going to name my layer. I'm going to change my blue in my color picker to more of a red violet. I like that. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing I did last time. I'm going to switch my color so black is on top, and I'm going to fill my layer black. Otherwise, the difference cloud filter won't work. Switch back to having my selected color on top, and again I'm going to go to Filter, Render, Difference Clouds. Not the effect we're looking for, so we're going to repeat it. That's even worse, but if we do it one more time, we'll get the effect we were hoping for. And there's that same web-like look. Now here's what I want to do. This second color is really just meant to interact with the blue in pieces. So I'm going to replicate this shape and direction relatively closely. Not perfectly, but relatively closely, following the exact same steps. So I want to get a sense that I started here, came up diagonally through, and then ended up in the top right corner and a little bit to the left. So I might reference my blue nebula layer a couple times as I work on this. Right? So click on my burn brush. Again, I'm going to probably start with midtones, exposure at 100%, big old fat brush set to 0% hardness, and away we go. Start to take some color out first, and once it gets darker, it'll be faster if I switch over to shadows and continue to take the rest out. And I just want to double check to make sure I'm okay. Not bad. And I'm going to have this pinch a little bit more. Need to switch back to midtones to get started in a particular area. Take the edge off. And whoops, undo. And now switch back over to shadows and finish it off. Now it's been a while since I checked my blue layer, so let me take a peek and see how I'm doing. Not bad, a little thickened through here, so let me take some bites out. And I'm going to take a little bit out here as well. Alright, so relatively the same, but not exactly the same. And that's what I'm looking for, because I just want the violet color to interact with the blue color in a particular way, in some places, but not all. To do that, I'm going to, again, double-click on my layer, bring up my layer options, change the blend mode to hue, but you can play around with a multitude of different settings to see which one looks the best. So the only requirement we have is that your first layer is definitely set to screen. That's very important. But the blend mode you use for your second or third color can just be whatever you want it to be that actually looks good and still lets you see the stars. So I actually kind of like the way screen looks. That doesn't look bad, but I do need to, again, split my pyramid by holding down Alt and clicking on the right half of the pyramid and dragging it over and helping get rid of some of the black. Now, if it helps you at all, you can hide the blue nebula if that makes it easier for you to see. Let me go ahead and switch this to screen. Right-click on the right half of the pyramid, reduce it down to what I want to keep, and then go ahead and show the blue nebula. I'm set to normal. I'm just going to scroll through and look for combinations that actually look good. Darker color, lighten's not bad. Screen is okay. Linear dodge is okay. It's really about two things. One, personal taste, and two, does it look realistic? Now, the lesson plan tells you to start with hue on your second layer. This is where you're supposed to start. So when you start going through the actual layer blending modes, this is a good place to start. And if it looks great, keep it. But I would encourage you to scroll through all the different styles to see if one actually looks better. I kind of like screen, to be honest with you, for mine. But I'll compare that to hue and see which one I like better. Although hue is nice. So for me, I'm going to go with screen. Now I can do a third color if I want. We can try something else out and see how it works. I'm going to try a black and white one. So let's do white nebula. And we'll just see what happens. You're not required to do a third one. We're just experimenting now. So let me go to Filter, Render, Difference Clouds. Repeat it twice. I'm going to select my burn brush and start burning away what I don't want. In fact, I'm going to go with a bigger brush this time. And I don't want as much this time, so I'm going to do a smaller area. Switch over to Shadows. Finish that off. And let's see what happens. I'm just trying it out. If I like it, I'll keep it, and if I don't, I will get rid of it. Double click on the layer, switch this to, we can start with hue, but that doesn't look very good. So I'm going to try screen, although that's pretty bright. We'll just start with screen and see what happens. Right click on the right half of the pyramid. Drastically reduce the amount of white. I just want it a little bit, to be honest with you. And I'm going to now experiment with different layer blending modes and see what happens. I like that. Darken looks good. Darker color looks good. I don't want it to be pure white. I'm just actually trying to add some lighting. That's not bad. Color dodge looks decent, as does overlay. Yeah, I kind of like overlay. I'm leaning in that direction right now. Vivid light. Nah. And it looks like, honestly, the only one that really did anything for me was overlay. So there we go. Mine is 3 layers. You're only required to have 2. Just remember that the bottom one has to be set to screen, and the other ones can be whatever you want. The lesson plan says start with hue, but I went with screen on my second one as well, and overlay on my third. Now, another thing that you can try, other than a different color, is try them in different orders. Like what happens if I put the violet one on the bottom? Now, of course, if it's on the bottom, it has to be set to screen, so that's super important. And now I'm going to experiment doing different things with the blue and see what happens. I like that. That's interesting. Wasn't going for red, but that actually looks pretty good. I actually didn't like any of those any better, so I'm just going to switch it back to screen, move it back underneath. Everything seems okay. Now the last thing that we're going to have to do is lower the opacities. As good as this looks, it's just too bright. When we make our planet and our moon, it's just going to compete with the foreground. So really what we need to do right now is come in here and start dropping these opacities as much as I don't want to. It looks good now, but once we put our planet in, it's going to be overpowering. So I'm just dropping some of these opacities so it's not so bright and intense. And that's the look I'm going for. I have more than one color. All right, I experimented with a third with white, and I like it, so I'm going to keep it. But the minimum is just 2. And I can see my stars through it because the bottom layer is set to screen, and the top layer can be set to whatever actually looks good. Remember, the lesson plan says to start with hue, which is a pretty good look. I actually like how that looks, but I just liked screen a little bit better. I thought it had some better details, and I am good to go.